Welcome again to another Discover Trempealeau County show. As you know, we've been traveling around the county for the last few years, interviewing people and the interesting things that they do, and we got an exceptionally good program today. We're located in Galesville, and we're going to be talking with Mary Knappen, and we're going to be talking about the old phone company down here. PHONECO is the name of the company, phone company, phone, CO company. And so we're going to be talking about the work that they do down here at Phones, and they've got a magnificent museum, and we'll be going through the museum and covering some of that and something about the phones and something about the business. But first of all, Mary, I'd like to ask you how you really got started with the phones. Was that, have you done that all your life, or was there some period in your life you began to have an interest in phones, and especially old phones?
Well, it began in 1973, but prior to that, Ron always liked old bring home treasures, and so you know, his folks had old things, and I grew up on a farm, and there was quite a few in our family, and we had hand-me-downs all through the years, and so we just used furniture that was given to us, and so old things are kind of in our blood, both of us. You know, we grew up with it and so on. And my dad was old-fashioned. In fact, he still farmed with horses in the early 1960s. So when we got married in 1960, we didn't have much, so we go to auctions and places to pick up furniture. And so then we started a little antique shop on the side, because to get rid of the stuff that we didn't want. And
let me ask you, were you working somewhere at that time? Was Ron working somewhere, and you're buying antique things on the side, or?
Yes, actually Ron was a school teacher, and so he had summers and weekends to play with the old stuff, antique stuff, go to auctions and go around looking for old things.
So how did you go from the antiques to the old phone?
Well, in 1971, we were down to Illinois at Christmas time to my family's Christmas gathering, and he slipped away to an old friend who he knew had old phones, and so he ended up buying 8 of them. And we stuffed them in our 56 little sedan, and along with 3 kids and Christmas gifts and luggage, and
you were real happy about that.
Yeah, I was. He spent our savings, and the kids weren't happy because they had to sit on them all the way home, and so which was about over 300 miles, and so I said, you got to sell those things. So he put an ad in the Antique Trader and waited for a couple weeks for it to come out, and when it came out, we had a lot of interest in old phones, and at that time, the interest was the true telephone collectors, and they call them and ask them all kinds of questions about these phones, and so within a month he had them all sold.
That was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
That was in the 1970s.
1971, yes.
And when did you come to, where were you at when you came to Galesville, or how did you arrive at Galesville here? How did you happen to buy this building? It'd be interesting to know what they did in this building at one time. Yeah. You know.
Well, he first started teaching in Amboy, Illinois for 4 years, and then he went to Mineral Point 1 year, and then we came to Melrose, Mandurl area where he taught at Melmin, and so we lived over in Melrose for 10 years, and that's where we got started. We had seen, with the antique shop, we had seen round tables go from $10 to $200, and carnival glass and commodes and all that type of stuff, and phones hadn't done that yet. So going back to the years when he was in high school, he'd rather read magazines and doodle rather than schoolwork. But somehow he became a teacher. I guess he understood kids more that way. But so he remembered reading about the Turtle Lake Telephone Company, who had a lot of phones in those magazines, and so he went up to visit Bob Prosser at Turtle Lake, and that just became a pipeline
Was that a small, maybe a co-op or something up there, an individual that owned that Turtle Lake company?
Right, it was an individual that owned the telephone company, and then on the side he collected old phones. He became the pipeline for all the telephone companies when they got rid of their old phones. He bought them for like a quarter apiece, and stored them, and he had buildings and buildings full at one time.
So how many phones did you start off with once you got a hold of this fellow from Turtle Lake, was it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many we started out. We started out with 8. That's the first time when we bought them in Illinois. But after that, we just bought carloads, or van loads.
Semi-loads?
Semi-loads. Yes, eventually semi-loads, because we ended up buying Bob out when he sold his telephone company, and yeah.
At one time, let's say at one time down here in Galesville, how many phones, you're talking about the old phones now, the old phones, like we used to have back when I was a kid. Ours was a long and too short, Those are the kind of phones you were buying then at that time.
Right.
And how many would you estimate that you had at one time after you got started? How many did you have? Did you have 1,000 or?
Probably. Yeah, we probably have 1,000 wood wall phones. No, maybe not. We've had 1,000 candlestick phones, and the things we were buying from Bob was the wood wall phones and the candlestick phones. And then we branched out into Bakelite's phones and French phones.
We're going to be looking at some of those as we go along here today.
Yeah.
Now you've developed quite a program here. You sell a lot of phones all over the country, and even do you sell any overseas?
Yeah, we sell some overseas. Not a whole lot, but we do sell. Actually, even off of eBay. We sell a few things off of eBay, and we have some overseas customers from that.
Well, I noticed, if I remember right, I might be wrong, but you went to some conference in Switzerland a few years back.
Yeah.
A big worldwide telephone conference of some sort, collectors, I guess.
Yeah, we went as the historian part of it. We took a few phones for display and talk about the history of the phones, and that was in Geneva, Switzerland.
Now, you have a beautiful calendar, catalog, I should say. Maybe you have a calendar too, but this is a catalog. And you have all the phones, a lot of the phones. I don't know how many phones you got in here, but you got the old ones. Maybe we'll ask you to show us your oldest phone that you got in maybe your museum here. But it covers a lot of parts and catalogs. Catalogs a lot of parts, I should say. And about how many phones do you think are listed in this catalog?
I think my husband counted one time, it was 85, something like that, different models. And then, of course, there's there's bunches and bunches of reproduction, novelty and character phones.
And you not only sell phones, you repair phones here. We're going to get into that, I guess, a little bit later. But you have people working and you repair phones. You make replica here also, replica phones?
A few. Yeah, we make a few replica, mostly wooden ones. And we've got a complete kit for candlestick phones, too.
And you've also got a museum. Today we hope to get a good idea of what you have here at your place, the PHONECO in Galesville. We also know from, we stop with our buses here, motor coach tours, and Mary gives us tours, and she tells about they rent her phones for movies out in Hollywood. So we're going to talk about that too, when we get through that. But how many, what classification, this may be an unfair question, but what classification would you have as far as old phone companies in the United States? I would think there wouldn't be too many old phone companies in the United States, but I might be wrong. Would you be considered one of the bigger old phone companies in the United States?
Yes, we are. Actually, some of the companies that were in business have now retired and sold the companies out. And there is one in Canada as well.
So did I just hear you right? You have the oldest phone company in the United States.
Probably.
Yeah. The largest old phone company.
Yeah, that restores old telephones.
Right here in Trempealeau County, ladies and gentlemen, right here in Galesville. And most people don't even know about it, you know,
Right.
what's going on. So that's, how do you get publicity out there, you know, for selling other than the catalogs? Is there any other way? Do you advertise any place? Do you have websites and things like that?
Yep. Over the years, we've advertised in antique-related magazines, and some of those have gone by the wayside, so there aren't that many now. But we've we still advertise in the antique magazines. We advertise. We have a website, and we have the catalog, of course, and we have our things in a couple malls around the area. In about 1985, we bought this building, and then in 1989, we were outgrowing the barn, and this had room for all the things that we needed to do, such as sandblasting and polishing and painting, and had bathrooms and office space. So we moved up in here in '89.
Say, maybe we could talk a little bit about, right next to you here, maybe we could move just a little bit so Ron can get a picture of this, unit. Perhaps you could tell us just a little bit about it and what it was used for and how it was used. I think I have an idea because I come from that era too.
This is a small switchboard. Actually, it's a cord board, because when the operator got a call from you, she would then plug these in. The little drop would drop down when she got a call, and then she'd plug it in. And she'd find out who you want to talk to, and then she would plug you into that one. So, and then make the connection. So later, and this particular board is a local board. It was used between Prairie du Chien and La Crosse. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of unique to this area. And the fact that it's small, it's not quite as heavy as some of them. But yeah, we bought a whole, more than a semi-load of switchboards from Turtle Lake at one time.
Wow, how many you got left?
This one.
Oh boy, they must have been in demand then at one time.
Yeah.
And what would they wouldn't be used for anything, so they'd be used for museums and things like that, or for display.
Yeah, and some of the collectors like to take them and hook all their phones that they've collected to.
Well, you know, I come from Oliva, and we had a telephone office down there, Sadie Vald and Adam Vald. And Sadie was the one that operated something that looked like this, maybe a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. I was only in there a couple times when I was a kid, but it was doing the same thing, poking, you know, different cords in. And then they had every phone had a certain ring, you know. Mm-hmm. It might be 3 long or 3 short. Ours happened to be long and 2 short. Mm-hmm. And but you could, my mother had. Shouldn't give away secrets, but this I think is true, because that's the way I remember it at least. There was a couple things about those phones. You didn't want to be in front of them when there was an electrical storm, because once in a while there'd be some sparks that would fly out the answering deal. Is that true?
That's true. They tried to put lightning arresters on a lot of the phones. You'll see little terminals and little carbon blocks and whatever on them. But you know, nothing stops light. So yes, a lot of times they put a switch on them so they'd shut the phone off, and they wouldn't have that hazard. But yeah.
Another thing, we'll get to those phones later. I'll point it out then. She had a way of kind of listening. You know, radio was poor, maybe one station, no TV or anything, so limited entertainment. But there's, you know, other people talking. That's entertainment. So I'll see if my memories, when we get to those phones, I'll ask you about that. But this Sadie now, if there was some kind of what we call 911, you know, a disaster somewhere, she had a way of a long ring. If it kept on ringing at home, you know, the phone, well, you knew that was some kind of emergency. And then you could plug in and listen, and she'd tell everybody where the problem, you know, fire. And I think it was the same kind of machine.
Yes, she took all the calls, whether it was emergencies or what have you. You know, she even got calls from mothers or dads wondering where their children are, and if she was on Main Street, she pretty much could tell them where they were and what they were up to. This particular board, the operator would have a headset with a little thing that went on of her ear. You know, she spoke into this thing, but then the headset was what she would hear from. Later on, they took this off the boards and they put the speaker on the chest. It was called a breastplate speaker, and then they still had the little headset. And then in the 50s, they went to this style, which was all one piece. And so
Oh, that was the first advancement, huh?
yeah, and so that was a lot easier to use and it was a lot lighter weight. So
Well, that in that era it was very personable, you know. I
Yeah.
remember Sadie, you know, you'd ask for, you'd call for, well, I'd like to call Oliver, X, such and such. Well, she said he's visiting his neighbor, so and so,
yeah.
you know. So
she knew
you
about
never
everything.
had a what? Didn't have to ring then, you know.
that's right.
Well, now you got something else. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this? What do you call it again?
Cord board or switchboard.
Switchboard. Anything else you'd like to add?
The operators, even though you probably didn't see them, they had to be very proper. They had to dress nice. They had to have a nice speaking voice, and they had to be very courteous. And you know, especially in the big telephone companies where they had switchboard after switchboard after switchboard. Locally, most of the towns had, if they were small, they had a switchboard and one operator. And she took all the calls. Sometimes they even had the switchboard in the home. It was there 24 hours, so she would answer the phone even if she slept. She had to get up and connect people to whoever they wanted to talk to.
And I don't know how it was elsewhere, but up at Eliva, where her husband was a repairman.
That
You know, if
could
you had
be.
any problem with it. Well, Mary, let's go on to this little phone right over here. This looks like, if it isn't an antique, it's probably made to look like an antique. But tell us about that phone.
Well, this one, granddaddy of this was made back in 1892 to, I think they made them through in the 30s. And
1892 was the beginning of this phone. When did Alexander Graham Bell invent the phone? Do you remember?
1876.
Oh, not
Yeah.
too long afterwards then.
Right.
This phone was developed.
Yeah, and like any new idea, all kinds of people jumped on the bandwagon and started to try to make a better mousetrap, you know. So there were a lot of phone makers and manufacturers and whatever. This one was actually made by Ericsson in overseas, and Ericsson had plants everywhere. They even had a plant in Rochester, New York. I believe it was Rochester. No, Buffalo, New York. And anyway, this particular one, the 100th anniversary of the telephone in 1976, Ericsson made this phone. I'm not sure where they used them. I think they gave them to a lot of their employees or sold them to them.
Is this a workable phone right here?
Yes, it is. And in 1995, they brought them back in, or they accumulated them, and they redid them again, and this is the result of that. The downside of this one is it's a pulse instead of a tone, and it's only got 10 buttons.
This ringer device here does not work. Well, it works.
Just for the fun of it, yes. But I think it also rings on incoming calls. Yeah, so.
Now you have along this wall over here, you've got a lot of, are these kind of novelty phones, or are they replicas?
Yeah.
Or could you explain, are these real high price? Are they rare, or are they not so rare? Or?
They're not so rare. In the 70s, probably the late 60s, 70s, they started making reproductions of a lot of phones. And candlesticks was one thing that they made over and over and over again. And they made a lot of phones, candlesticks before these, but these were the first plastic ones, and they made a lot of them.
By the way, you said candlesticks.
Candlesticks.
How do they get their name?
Oh, they look like a candlestick. Kind of like.
Oh,
And,
sorry about that.
And then this company called American Telecommunications out of California designed these, as well as a whole slew of different varieties of these. And then the telephone companies saw that, so Bell said, well, they wanted the carcasses, and they'd put their own stuff in them, which some of these will have Western Electric equipment in, and then Automatic Electric did the same thing. General Tel or Automatic Electric made phones for all the independents companies, and in this area we had General Tel, and that was, so yeah, they made, and then all through the 80s You'll see a lot of novelty phones when we go upstairs. All through the 80s, they made all kinds of character phones and novelty phones, and also into the 90s. There's not so many being made now because people are going to cell phones and stuff.
So I'm getting the feeling that you not only sell old phones, you know, old phones, original phones, but you sell replicas here, and you sell many kinds of replicas, and you fix phones. Well, Mary, we're kind of in the entrance of your factory, or where you do the work. Got a lot of old phones. It brings back memories there. You were just telling me you have one of these that are exceptionally old. And would you like to point that out and tell us just a little bit about it?
Well, some of the early phones were called two-box phones, and that's what you have here. This one happens to be made by Stromberg Carlson, probably about 1895-ish, into the 1900s they made them. And then after they finished with the two-boxers, they went to what we call the picture frame front cathedral tops. You'll see that there's a picture frame in the door, and the back is higher, and that's where they put the arresters to keep the lightning out. There were, at one time, there was like maybe 250 manufacturers or assemblers of phones, and Wisconsin, for some odd reason, had about 11 of these companies. And this particular one here was made by Julius Andre out of Milwaukee. And the characteristic of Julius Andre is they had the folding shelf, the little metal bracket that folded down. Julius Andre is more or less an assembler because they use parts from other companies. You won't find the same design on each one of them. But like Kellogg here, this isn't a real good example, but because it's kind of dark. But Kellogg, you can see it has the four rounded things on the transmitter mount. So that's characteristic of Kellogg. Western was a rectangular one. Well, we'll go to
Well, let me ask you, these what is the age of these phones roughly right here? You said this is 1895. How about these phones right here? Would they have any idea what age that they started making those kind of phones?
The cathedral top picture frame fronts, a lot of them were started before 1900, maybe as early as 1895, but they pretty much got going in the early 1900s and then into the teens.
Now this phone right here, and I have got that at home. It looks very similar to that. Is that what we had back home on the farm? We had the long and too short. Do these ring or not? Well, rang something like this then.
Maybe that one won't.
Well, it hasn't been used for a little while, but it'll lie long and too short. Now, my mother had a deal. You tell me if this is my memory might be fading, you know, because we had these kind of phones for a long time. She had right from this answering deal right here. Yeah, well, okay, why don't we talk about the insides?
Well, most of the phones inside had what they call a magneto, which when you ring it, it produces electricity, which is what brings the bells. They only provided power for the magneto, or for the ringing of the phones, so you can ring the operator or somebody on your line. And then they had batteries in the bottom, which was what powered up your talk and listen. Those, of course, corroded and got thrown out a long time ago. But
that for granted, I did a little of that too, to be honest. But you know, I didn't know. Maybe other people could hear the babies crying. You know, and we didn't know it. See,
they knew who was on the line by the cries of their kids. Yeah.
Well, let's. Is there anything else you want to say about these old phones? They're all for sale, right?
Oh yes.
You have any idea what the price would be roughly? I'm sure they range.
It's really hard nowadays because of the economy and how the prices have gone down. But yeah, it's anywhere from $350 to $450 kind of.
And these are the kind of phones that were just given away. I think even throwing out at one time. You know?
Oh yeah, they threw them out. Phone company destroyed a lot of them.
Every home and every town and every country, all the country farms and everything had phones in my era that looked like this.
And can you believe that in the early 1900s, these phones only sold for about $8?
Really?
$8, and you all the work that went into making a magneto and all that. That was the industrial age, and you know a lot got designed and made during that time.
And think of the fact that these weren't, you know, how many years after Alexander Graham Bell invented, you know.
I just wanted to point out, like this design here was the next step from the picture frame front. They cut off the top and just had the picture frame front right here. And this happens to be the Western Electric design, which is a rectangular base. This is a real early one. This is a real early one. It's called the Blake, and you can see the little, like maybe you can't, the little switch hook has got spear horns here. It's a real early design. This one here is called the Fiddleback. This one happens to be made by Kellogg. And this is what we call a Danish phone, made over in Denmark or a lot of this countries over there. The European countries had a lot of different designs of phones as well. In fact, they have the fancier ones. And like I say, there's about 200 different manufacturers. Here's a North, another Western. Well, yeah, this is just another, I got stuff hanging over it. This is another Danish phone. Actually, there's some history to that, but I don't recall what it is. And this is a Stromberg Carlson.
Do you have any idea, Mary, how many of these phones, these old phones we've just been looking at, these are the real old phones. Do you have any idea how many you might have in your total inventory that you have that you now loaded in semis or whatever? Do you have any idea how many you still have available?
We probably have 500 wood walls. Yeah. Oh, and then after the picture frame front, they went to the plain door, and then these are called the farm. A lot of the farms had these, farmhouses had these. So,
I got a little something to add about this Danish Scandinavian design. That is kind of an artistic design. They are thinking of phones more than just something to use, but for
are very decorative. European phones are very decorative, pretty much. This particular one here was used in the railroad. It's got a headset on it instead of a receiver.
Well, Mary, if anybody wants a phone, they don't have to travel out of the county to get one. Well, they've had many movies that have rented phones right here from PHONECO, right from you, where they had old scenes. And you've got a little display here, but it don't show too many of the movies. But you have a lot of requests from Hollywood, I think, and elsewhere. Tell us a little about that.
One of our very first movies that we supplied phones to was about in 1985, 89, right in there. It was called 8 Men Out, a baseball scandal movie, you know. We supplied a lot of phones to that one. That was the first one. Then Fried Green Tomatoes was kind of following that and so on. But the more recent ones here, 2007, 2005, 2006 here, we got The Good German, The Good Shepherd, Black Dahlia, The Cinderella Man, Skeleton Key, you probably remember a lot of those, JFK. We were also in American Gangster, Charlie Wilson's War. There was a lot of them. And J. Edgar Hoover was about a year ago. And yeah, we've sent phones out recently too. I'm not a moviegoer, so I don't really remember all. I can't really. But we've also rent and sell phones to some of the TV shows.
Oh, really?
And also, if people are doing an advertisement, sometimes they want a phone in, they'll get phones.
Well, how does that work? Say if somebody from Hollywood is developing a film, how many phones do they request at one time?
It depends. One, sometimes 18, 20. They usually have prop directors that contact us.
Oh yeah. Well, you got quite a reputation, and you get these requests from more than one producer of movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. The first one was Long Wharf Theater, and of course some of these prop people they work with other prop companies too. But that was one of the first ones, and she just recently contacted us again. Oh. It was kind of fun.
Got another one coming up though.
Yeah.
Well, then they send them back, and then you rent them out. Is that the idea?
Sometimes we rent, sometimes we sell. So.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But you should go to a movie once in a while to see your phone.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to look around the, what do you call this, a factory or assembly area? We're going to look around, and you're repairing things and making things that don't work, and things like that. Well, we're with David Hipsch.
Right.
Is that pretty close?
That's exactly.
It's hard to spell.
Yes, it is.
And he's in the electronics restoration area, I guess, for the telephones here at PHONECO down at Galesville. And he's working on something, and you're going to have to start from the bottom and explain it, because a lot of us don't understand what you're doing. They're little deals with a lot of little wires in. Looks like, did you make that?
Yes, I did. We start with the blank form, and in each of these drawers are the components that go into it, and you place them where they're marked. Then you have to flip it over and solder each individual piece. And this is a horn that also makes it ring. But these are for this type of telephone, the old stick phone. This would go in here, wired would come down in the inside and be all connected down here. And this is the microphone that you speak into then, that little silver thing. And that's the horn that actually rings when the phone rings.
And you put that little electronic gadget all together, huh?
Yes.
How'd you learn how to do that? That looks like it's, beyond human ability.
No, actually the nice part is each component is marked on the card of what you need to put in there. So you just got to take it out of the right drawer. That's it. And some of them have to be oriented the proper way, but other than that, it's a job you can learn right here.
Well, let me ask you about that telephone again. Could you bring that telephone back, and we'll talk a little about that? That stick phone, candlestick phone.
Okay.
Now, is this an old phone that you're making new? Is that what you're doing, or is this a new phone?
No, this is an old phone. Those are the original components inside, and they were wired directly, each one just hardwired one to another, and they didn't work on the electronic systems we have today very well.
So you're putting the electronic systems into an old phone.
Yes.
That's a 1918.
Right.
1918. Mary Knappen just told us. 1918. Right. Boy, that's getting right back there. So how long does it take you to fix a phone? So you mean now you sell these phones. What kind of a deal have you got for dialing?
Well, there are regular dials that go into them. This one doesn't have one in it, but this is the place where it sits right in here. Mary can grab one and show you in just a minute. Mm-hmm. We have dials all over the place. In fact, right behind you are boxes of dials.
Oh, here. Now we'll understand it. We'll see it. Yeah.
You see that would fit right there, and there you have the dial, and it's not an electronic dial. It's the old hard dial that actually counts each click as it goes by to tell you what the number is. But it certainly works terrific. I mean, these work just as good as anything you can buy in the store.
So you have something to add, Mary?
Yes. Let's see if you can see it here. Of course, when you put your finger in it, you turn it, and that you select the number that you're going to turn. You want to dial, like anywhere from 1 to 0. But on the back side are the switches, and so when you dial, this side of switches on this side open and shut like a switch. Turns it on and turns it off. And then this side is the side that when the dial goes around, does the digits. So if it's 3 digits, it goes 3 times, and if it's 10, it goes more. So that's the way an old dial worked. He's got his mechanical.
Is this a 1919 design also, Mary? Is that the same kind of dial that
this is not really the dial that goes in there, although it'll fit. This one is more of 30s and 40s.
So they had dial phones back in the 1919s.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you're updating this phone, and you get it all together, then you run what? Some tests to make sure that it's working?
Oh yes. Yeah, our test machine will test, first of all, is there a circuit? When you turn the switch down, it's supposed to go off, and when it comes up, it's on. And that's first thing you test. Then it'll test when you talk, will it work? When it receives in the handset, will that work? And test the ringer if you've put a ringer in. These original phones didn't really have them; they had boxes. But these are the little ringers that we make now that can fit into any kind of phone. And they're really nice. I mean, you hear them well. They're not a bell, but they make quite a sound. I could show you if you'd like to see that.
So, and simply explained, I think you're making old phones new. And people like the looks of the old phones, but they like the convenience and the reliability and the workability of the modern things that you're putting in the old phones.
I would say that's true, yeah. That brings them a little more up to date, gives them a little more power. They'll work more reliably, Now,
let me ask another question here. Mary, you maybe stick by us on this one. Are these phones, do you make these up, and you make them up, do you then just put them in your catalogs for sale? Or do you have requests for these type of phones, and you make them based on the requests that you have? Or do you just make a couple large quantity of phones and then sell them to whoever sees them in your ads or in the eBay and so forth?
Yeah, we standardize them. We make them up and we have them in stock, so when we get an order, we can just ship it out. Although we do also make them the way the customer wants too. Sometimes they want brass parts, shiny brass parts. Sometimes they want nickel parts, things like that.
Are these the kind of phones that maybe they'd use for movies?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we rent or sell a lot of candlestick phones. Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything you'd like to add, Dave, before we leave your station here?
No, actually, the only thing I would say is I really appreciate this position. I've been retired for several years, and a few of us retired guys work around here, and we're able to learn new things, do something different from. I was a tax assessor. Don't tell anybody for 28 years. You don't want to tell that.
You got along with everybody, though.
Yeah, right. And I'm well hidden in a brick building now. I like that. But this is really quite a treat because it's something completely different. It's instant gratification. Once you put all this together and it works, you can talk and hear and it rings and everything. That's the instant gratification. And it's just a remarkable place to work. I mean, if she takes you on the tour and you see the multitude, the thousands and thousands of parts that are here, and you realize that you can take the proper ones, put them together, and you've got a working phone, that's quite an achievement.
You do a great job. Is she going to pay for this time that you spend with us today here? You think you're going to get paid for this?
I think so, yes.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
This is an example of some of the payphones that we do. We repaint them and polish the handsets, and some of these bodies are reproduction. We had them made in the last probably 15 years. We've had the body's made, but the parts on them are old. The dials, the coin gauge, and the handsets and all that are still old. But people still like payphones. They like them for the rec rooms and whatever. And we do the red ones for people who collect Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and they kind of like the red ones that way. This one here is the older. It's designed after the older style, where they had the separate speaker part and the separate receiver, just like the old wood wall phones. And then they evolved into the handset style in the 50s. So just want to show you that, and this is quite popular too.
Dave is going to show us the testing that he does on these phones and make sure they're working.
This is the test to make sure that this module will work properly. When it's done, it's going to be put in a phone just like this, like that. Now we plug it in, and we go to the test machine, and we see if it rings.
It's working.
There's the ring. Then you can see if the receiver is working.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then the transmitter. You can either blow in it and see this light come on, or even tapping it, it'll show that comes on. Then test the loop to see that the switch is working and everything. It's passed now because the switch is up. It's failed because it turned off now. And that's our test on each one of these electronic pieces.
Do you ever make any mistake when you're welding? I noticed you had the radio on. You know, you're listening to the radio. Is you're detracted a little bit once in a while?
Well, hopefully not. And if I did with the boss standing here, I wouldn't admit it anyway.
Well, we're at another telephone restoration area here in PHONECO in Galesville, talking about the work they do on old phones and keeping everything working and making old phones work like new phones and things like that. And Mary, why don't you explain what's going on in this particular area?
Well, the wooden wall phones, of course, take a lot of refinishing and polishing, but people send us their wood wall phones to get wired to work. And this particular one here is a customer's that came in the other day, and the parts are down in polishing, and he wanted a rotary dial put in the phone, so that's what we're putting in this one. And when we get done, it's got a magnetic catch on the door so they can open it. They can also ring it for the fun of it when it's done, and it'll ring also on the bells on the incoming calls.
Could I ask you, Mary, this phone now, that was new about what year?
Oh, probably, this one was probably done in the 40s.
So somebody's had this for many years, and he wanted to upgrade it to something on the wall to look at, and he wanted something to use. And Bill Delato, is that pretty close, Bill?
You got it.
That's pretty said I got it. He's the guy that works in this department.
Yeah.
And does he do things like this only, or are there other things that he does besides?
He puts together reproduction wood wall phones. He restores, he finishes old phones and wires them all up.
So, in other words, if this person that brought this in didn't want to have this made new with a rotary dial deal there, he could have fixed it up so it worked the old way.
Yeah, yeah.
Where'd you learn all this?
He's just learned in the last year. He's been here a year with us.
He must be a pretty fast learner. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I guess
yeah, we do a lot of different types of wood phones, and this happened to be leftover cabinets from AT&T when they did their little Country Junction phone, and so we will build it all back up with parts that we have. Some will be rotary and some will be touch tone. So that's one of them.
Let me ask you here now. Just a minute. Now this looks like an original phone that's been cleaned up, but you say this is all new? Everything is made new?
Yeah, this was back in the 80s and 90s. AT&T. Well, it was before the breakup, so it had to be early 80s, late 70s, early 80s when they were making these reproduction Country Junction phones, and so they didn't. When they broke up, they were done.
Now, are you making that for your catalog to sell, or are you making it for somebody that wanted it?
No, we make them up for our catalog, and but we got the cases from them, and we're building them back up. Yeah.
That also done by Bill here? Say, let me ask you just a question here as long as we're here. I've been walking through this storage building, and we got different stations here. Not everybody's working today, but Ron could maybe catch a little glimpse along here. This is just loaded. It's about 15 feet high. There's the shelves that go all the way to the ceiling. The length of it must be 150 feet long. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. And the width probably is close to 50 feet wide. And this is a huge area, and it's all full of phone things. And am I telling the truth?
Yeah, the building is actually almost 300 feet long.
Oh boy, oh boy. There's a lot of stuff loaded in this factory that you have here. And I'd like to ask you, this is quite a building, and it was you bought it used, so what was it used for at one time here in Galesville? What was the building used for? Right along the Beaver Creek that goes right behind you, behind where the windows are.
The section that we're standing in right now was actually the old hotel, the old Riverside Hotel. which was a booming place back in the early 1900s. People would come to town and they'd have to sometimes have to stay overnight. So they would park their buggies outdoors, and then the horses would come inside, and then the level below here. And then this here's part here was for eating and dancing and whatever, you know. And then the upstairs was for staying overnight. Beds had rooms.
When you bought this place, was some of this old hotel things still here, or
no? Actually, in the 40s, they built the wing on the south end, a 100-foot wing. They tore down a couple barns that was there. And then in the 50s, they built the other end, 100-foot on the other end of the building here.
What was that used for then?
They made electric fencing.
It was kind of a factory.
Yeah, it was a factory, yeah. They made surge milking equipment before they moved up into their new plant. Up in the 60s, they built a new plant up on the upper table. Before we bought it, they were making wood stoves, wood furnaces and wood stoves back in the 70s.
Had a lot of use then.
Yeah, yeah. Customers send us phones, and this is a Pink Princess. Everybody knows the Pink Princess. This had a few little problems, so the customer sent it in, and we have it fixed. Do
they come from all over the United States?
Yes, yep.
And other countries?
And well, it's kind of expensive to send it from other countries, but yeah. And we have an order for they order phones, and they request different colors. This particular one here, they ordered 3 of them. One was a gray one, one's a beige, and one's a black. And this they wanted a 2-line. This happens to be a 2-line phone where you just turn this for your other line if you have 2 lines coming in your house. So we've got that order just about ready.
Do people order those just because of their certain nostalgic value, you know, that they've had them for a long time? They don't like change, so they just want to keep going with what they have, upgrade it a little bit?
Yeah, or they're adding to. A lot of people just like the older phones. They like the way they function. They got the bigger buttons. You know, it's kind of hard to hit those little tiny ones. You know, with your big fingers.
I know. I've got that problem.
So yeah, they like the older phones. Yeah, and there's still people that like the rotary phones. We saw a lot of rotary phones. So.
Anything else here that you'd like to point out?
This is a recent purchase. Isn't that a beauty?
Boy, it's beautiful.
It's phone from the 60s made by and it could be a wall or a desk. And this came in many pastel colors. I have a lot of the colors up in the museum, but I didn't have a red one. I recently got this.
So somebody, you bought that from somebody just recently?
eBay.
eBay. Okay, Mary, we'll go down to the next spot here.
We have a lot of companies, other businesses, or antique stores, whatever, that order phones, and one of them is called OK Fine Furniture in California, and they buy a lot of the colored 2500s, and that's what Dave is working on here. We try to keep a stock up because we never know when they're going to order.
What do they do with them out in California then?
They put them in the store and resell them.
And so you're obtaining the material that you need and sending them a phone that works. What's your job then, Dave, to make these things operable?
We take these cell phones apart, and we make sure everything's, we send case downstairs for buffing. We do a real nice job buffing them up. Then they come back up to us, we put them back together again, make sure the ringers works good, transmitter, receiver, transmitter, touch tone pad, or dial, whatever they want in it. Make sure everything works good. We've got testers we go by, and send them out, and we want to have happy customers.
It looks kind of complicated.
Well, it's not too bad once you get used to it.
Do you ever run into a situation where you just can't figure it out?
Oh yeah.
Does Mary take care of those?
No.
Who does?
We figured out. Yeah, we
you guys figured it out.
We figured it out.
Well, it looks like you got quite a You think about it, you got other people working here, and you figure out what the problem is, and you get it working.
Yeah, it's a process of elimination. They have, is it the touch tone? Is it the network? The network or the electronics of it control everything. So, yeah, so it could be.
Well, Dave, would you like anything else? Dave Tranberg, by the way. You have relatives here in Trumbull County. The name is real familiar.
Yeah, many relatives.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, we got another fellow, Mary, but you can talk about him later. He does dial telephones. But, yeah, we do a lot of telephones for people. And like I said before, we want to have satisfied customers and hope they'll be happy, put a smile on their face.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you. Another storage area, and it's an area that's cold today. It's not heated, and it's just loaded. It's about 100 feet long and about 40 feet, 50 feet wide. And what is this? What kind of storage do you have in here?
Well, we have ready-to-go products so that once we get an order, we can just come out here and pick it out and test it again and ship it out. This is our storage for parts and for done-up phones and books, extra books and signs and stuff like that. So yes, this building, this part we don't heat, and in the wintertime we have to let the dials warm up before we ship them out because they get a little cold and slow.
Boy, oh boy, Mary, I don't know. I said you had 100 feet or two. It's more like what, 300 feet, I think, altogether here.
Right, and then the south wing and the north wing are 4 stories. There's a story above this one, which is street level, and then there's 2 stories below, 2 rooms below, levels below. Have our own cords made by a weaver, a cord weaver. First of all, we have to buy the tinsel wire, which is little copper strands with a little cotton thread in there to help hold it together. And so we buy the tinsel wire from a manufacturer here in the U.S., and we have it shipped to our weaver, and the weaver will weave individual strands, and then they'll color code them so you know what color, like this one has a green stripe and a red stripe. It's made in all kinds of conductors, up to 8 conductors in a cord. The 2 conductor was used for the receivers for the old wood wall phones and for the line cords. And then when they went to the handsets, and the phones of the 20s and 30s and 40s and so on, they went to 3 conductors, so this cord will have 3 in, and then up to 4, and so on, 5, 6, and up to 8. So, and it comes in brown. Brown is the standard color, but they also use black, and the French phones, the older French phones had green cords, and we do red as well. So, and we also buy the little, the spades that go on in. We make up our own cords with the machines over there, and these are piercing clip where you pinch them onto the cord and they make contact.
Well, Mary, we're downstairs where the horses once stood for the hotel, and this is what is this division? What do you do down here?
This is our sanding and polishing division. One more floor down is where we do our sandblasting, because we have to take the old paint off of a lot of the metal phones, like the pay phones and French phones and so on. So we have to get that old paint off before we can repaint. Then when they come up, we send them to the paint room, and they put a coat on them. Primer, I can think of primer. Put a primer on them, and then we have to wet sand them. So I have a lady that puts them under the water, and she wet sands everything real smooth and gets it ready. And then it goes back into the paint room and gets painted whatever color the customers want. Usually black, but we do ivory and red and some odd colors, like chartreuse green. So that's what.
Are these old phones that you received in? They're old phones that you're rejuvenating.
Yes, rejuvenating.
And you take them all apart like that. Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes we even patch. We have to patch sometimes, and then we paint black. That's a plastic phone there. So a lot of times we patch the Bakelites too. When we restore the plastic phones, we have to sand them off, sand the scratches out, and sometimes they're yellowed and dirty, so we use these palm sanders to sand off all the crud and get the scratches out. and so on. And once we do that, then we buff them up. And it's surprising, use these buffing wheels. One wheel will have a coarser compound on, and the other will have a polishing compound. So we buff it right up again. And I'm not real good at this, but I can do it if I have to. And you can see it's shiny again after it was all dull from sanding. So we restore a lot of the plastics that way.
Person don't realize how much work there is to restoring an old phone, do you?
A lot of times we have to polish the brass on phones, and some of the old phones, they painted over the brass, but people like brass, so then we take the paint off and polish it back up. Or some of our reproduction parts that come in that are brass need to be polished. And this is our brass polishing machine here. And it takes a green compound on a kind of a real coarse wheel that we, and this is a dirty job. Although we do have dust collectors here that collect that. And you can see it doesn't take too long to get it nice and shiny again.
Oh, that really makes a difference.
Yeah. We try to save everything that we can, so we end up doing a lot of patching. And of course a lot of the old metals sometimes get a lot of pits in, so we have to fill those too, and that's what they're doing here. Is that this had some pits in, so they filled it in before it gets primed, and then priming covers it up, of course. Like I say, we save all the old phones that we can. This particular one here had a broken out in the end there, and he's patching that, and this hill will have to be painted when we're done. So that's happened to be a Bakelite piece, and here's another Bakelite piece that we've had to patch, just to save the old phones, otherwise might run out. This is a lot of the novelty phones that were made anywhere from early 70s all the way through some of the 90s, I guess, down into the 90s. And you can see that a lot of them are TV characters like Cookie Monster, Bugs Bunny, and those. They made a series of gas pumps, and I think there was like 12 of them in a series. I don't have all of them, but I have quite a few of them. This one being Shell, and Standard. There's Gulf. Some of them I've never heard of. Whoops. Called, this is Crown. Sunco, I've never heard of some of those, but they're probably on the coastlines or whatever. They made like Mickey and Snoopy, and made Mickey many, many times, Snoopy, then the Pops and the Beers, Garfield, Pizza Inn, even a spark plug here. So, Gumby. So, lots of them. Where's your favorite one, Ann? This is an interesting one because it looks like a tape measure, but it's a phone.
Perfect for the handyman.
You open it up, and you can talk on it like this, and you can dial. You got little tiny buttons there to dial on. Wow. Stanley Alexander Graham Bell phone, plain phone. So Opus, Pillsbury, Doughboy. They all did work. Yeah, hopefully they work. Sometimes they get a little dried out sitting around, but
they're all for sale.
All for sale. For the novelty person, or the people that like character phones and so on.
Right here at PHONECO at Galesville. It's on the 3rd floor. And let me ask you again: is this open for the public? And how do they go about wanting to, if they want to see the? You got just an immense amount of phones and different telephone equipment in this museum. How do they go about getting into the museum? Is it available? Or is it when you're here, they can come in, or is there anything? Do they have to call you, or?
No, no. You can just walk in. Individuals, we usually just let them, turn them loose, and they can go ramble wherever they want to go in the building and see things. If there's groups, though, we need to call and make sure I have people here to show them through if there's a group. We're standing here near a telegraph display, and telegraph was before the telephones, and it was they signaled by dots and dashes, and using the Morse code. So they had to learn how to had to know the code, plus they had to know how to spell and had to know how to listen really well too. So that, and they were used in for telecommunication before, like I said, before the telephone, and also they were used. Oh, I don't know, probably into the 40s and 50s, like in the railroads and places like that. So, yeah, they had a key that would do the dots and dashes, and then they'd have a relay and sounders that would do the sound, and then the relays were used to from station to station to station. We have on the wall here a picture of Morse, Mr. Morse, who designed the Morse code when he was young and when he was older. So we had a group in here one day, and I was tapping around on this, and they said, "Oh, text messaging." So we have come full circle, except I don't think they shortcutted back then. I'm not sure. They also sent signals by light or by a buzzer. If they didn't want to be disturbed or disturb people in the room, they used a light for signaling. Remember downstairs I showed you a red phone. Here's some of the here's a white one, and a light green one, and a pink, the pastels of the same design of phone. Pastels or colors actually got started in the 40s and really got going in the 50s. People liked the pastels, 50s and 60s. Princess phones were all the pastels as well.
Mary, right behind you, something caught my eye. This is a very old phone.
Yeah, that's called a grocer's phone. It's walnut. I think it got its name because it was used probably in a lot of the grocery stores where they had a bigger ledge to write their grocery list on. Shelving here, we have different styles of phones, starting in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Western Electric, Automatic Electric, Kellogg, Stromberg Carlson, and of course your older phones had your candlesticks, and your oval phones like this had bell boxes. They didn't have the ringers inside the phone. They put the ringers inside the phone in the 30s, late 30s and 40s.
Mary, you know a lot about phones, and I understand you and Ron, your husband, wrote a book on phones and published a book. Is that still available, and what was the name of the book?
We had a book called History and Identification of Old Telephones. It was about 800 pages, but it's not in print right now. We're all sold out. He has another to print, but just hasn't gotten around to publishing it. But we did do the payphone history. We've done 2 payphone histories. The first one's about a ½ inch thick, and the second one's about 1 inch thick. Covers signs and pay booths and a lot of things. So we do have that one. We also still have a price guide that was done in 1980, I think, on the pricing of old phones. We still have that available. Plus we sell a lot of other people's books.
Well, Mary, we might add that your current catalog looks something like this. Old phones, PHONECO, right here in Galesville. And if anybody wants a catalog, I guess they just notify you. Ron will have your name and number and so forth on the show when it's shown. Now these phones here, tell us about these. It just boggles my mind. It's all these phones.
Well, it's a wide variety of candlesticks. Kellogg. This happens to be a Kellogg. It's brown, and it was used in the postal department. I don't know why they did them brown, but they did. This was kind of unusual. It's got a pearl covering on the stem and the base. It's made by Ericsson, a European phone, so it's very pretty. It's unusual. And of course they chrome plated them, or parts, just parts of them are chrome plated. This particular one here is was made in Europe by the Bell system. Kind of has what they call the mother-in-law's eavesdropping receiver on the back. So just a variety of phones. In the 60s they made them into lamps. they called it the Junior Achievement Program, where they let the young kids, they gave them, I guess they gave them a phone and they taught them how to wire it for a lamp. So you'll see a lot of candlesticks made into lamps.
Now, since this is in your museum, Mary, are they available for sale?
Oh yes, everything's for sale. Plus we have duplicates other places, so yeah, they're for sale. What you're looking at now are what they call intercom phones. They were used within big businesses, factory buildings and whatever, so it was a way of communicating from the office to people on the floor, or big department stores. And yeah, we rent a lot of these to movies. This corner just shows a lot of porcelain insulators, switches, that type of thing, just odds and ends of stuff.
Mary, before you, Ron, I think is shooting the European phones. I'd like to ask you a question. Now, the phone technology was started here in the United States, I believe. So these phones are copies of American technology. Would that be a fair assessment or not? These European phones?
Yes and no. Actually, they were experimenting with telephone ideas before Bell. Actually, Bell was he made trips overseas to visit with, I believe, Reese and a few other the people who were trying to develop this. He beat everybody to the patent office, and that's how he got credit for it. But yeah, you're looking at European phones, and some of them are made in Belgium, England. This is an English phone, and that has a little drawer at the bottom, which is characteristic of that particular phone. The gray ones were used in the postal system. This one here is a Russian phone. It was used in Russia. You can see the lettering around there. This one here is Switzerland. This gray one, it's a Switzerland phone. This particular one right here, we got when we were in Switzerland. My husband found this part when we were in Switzerland, we went to Paris to see the flea market. The huge Paris flea market he'd always heard about, and he wanted to go, so we did. And he found this one at one booth, and he found the little wooden box at another booth. So we could put it together. Our toys. It was popular in the 40s and 50s and 60s to have toys, and most of them are made out of metal, so you can see they would not be sold today as a toy. So this chart here I did for the history of Gillsville, and this one here shows the switchboard used in the 50s here in Gillsville. Probably started in the 40s. And this one here is on Trempealeau in the 20s. And I think this one here is Arcadia Independence one. You can't hardly see it, but it's there. And shows the old potbelly stove in the picture. I thought that was kind of interesting how they had to heat. And then this one here also is an article about somewhere in the area. I'm not sure just where. It's got a wood wall phone on the wall, as well as some. This display case right here shows some of the first colored phones, and Western Electric was the leader in making colored plastic. They called it thermoplastic, and they made pink and green, red, and there were some other rare colors, blues and other colors that are very, very highly collectible. And then they started painting the 202s, which were normally black. They started painting them different colors. So, and I think in the military, the green ones were military colors.
Well, every place you go at PHONECO, every little cubbyhole is just full of phones. It's just unbelievable. It just boggles your mind. We're in a little lobby here, overlooking the street here at PHONECO in Galesville, and more phones, more things. Maybe you'd like to point out a few things, Mary, that we haven't seen before.
These are just general phones here on the shelf, made most of them in the 80s. And on the top row here, the phone company never really, in the early 1900s all the way through, I would say, the 50s, they really didn't throw things out. They remade them so they would work. And this is an example of a variety of ways a phone could be, with the handset on the side, on the top, you know. Then here was a two-piece receiver and transmitter. And then when dial came out, they put a dial on the phone. Just like that, they reused it. So you see that a lot. Another Danish phone. These are Ericsson phones, also made by, I think, Western Electric had their hand in it. And down here in the corner, I don't think you can see it too well, is what they call a tandem, kind of like, and it's also got the narrow waistband, and they call those the Gibson girls. That one happens to be made by Farr. As I said earlier, Wisconsin had about 11 or 12 manufacturers, assemblers of phones, and we talked about Milwaukee. And this particular one right here in the window is Voigtberger, and that was made in La Crosse. So, and this design was called the Fiddleback. Other phones in this here window are the two-box phones. One's a Swedish American. So this is a Stromberg. It's a big one here. And the reason for the bottom boxes was they had the old glass batteries with acid in, and the acid is what was acted like a battery, and it brought up talk and listen. That was your receiver and your transmitter. That's what it powered up. So some of them had only one big glass battery. Some had two. This particular one here had three. So it needed a lot of power, I guess. That one's made by Western Electric. These little pay stations were before the 3-slot pay phone as we know it in the 50s. These were, sometimes they were attached to phones, or this one here was attached to a candlestick. And this one was a self-contained one. It had the receiver, separate receiver, and transmitter. Here shows where the candlestick is attached to it. Sometimes they had a bracket on the back that fit on the back of a wood wall phone, or they mounted them on the front of a wood wall phone to make them into pay phones. Kind of interesting concept. This one here shows you how they mounted it on the side of a wood wall phone and made it into a pay phone. Now the pay phones are interesting in that they required a nickel or a dime or a quarter. And inside the pay phone is a bell, and each coin would make a different sound. And so the operator who ran the pay phones knew how many coins you put in by the sound, so you couldn't cheat her.
Well, Mary, you know, I was just listening to Jay Leno last night, and they were talking about payphones in New York, and they're actually hard to find, payphones today, because of the cell phone.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, this has taken Ron and my breath away, seeing all these phones today. It's just been amazing. I'm afraid a lot of people in Trumbull County didn't even know you existed, and here's the biggest phone company in the United States.
Right.
And I know you've been too busy to be with us for this length of time for this show. You're too busy for that, but you're going to have to work a little later tonight, I think.
Yeah.
So with that, I guess we're about ready to... you got something to add?
Yeah. Well, I thank you guys for coming. It was kind of fun, you know. I forget about a lot of this stuff until I start talking about it again. So, yeah, the public is welcome to come anytime. Actually, we will have been in business full-time for 40 years next year. Actually in January, but Ron says not officially until he quit teaching in May. So.
Well, do you have somebody in the family who's going to take over for you?
That I don't know.
Well, you got a lot of stuff here, I'll tell you. This is something else. And we appreciate everything you do for the community. You're always involved with so many things, both in Galesville and in the county level. We want to thank you for the show. It's been a great pleasure being down here. And with that, I guess we'll see everybody at the next Discover Trumbull County show real soon. Thank you.